there. Let's go ahead and get started. As we know, we're talking about India today. Very excited. So we've got myself, founder of Traverse Journeys. I'm in this picture with a blue jacket on, and Pradhav, our local guide, who you're going to get to meet here in just a minute. Pradhav, you want to say
Hey,
hi?
namaste. Namaste, everyone. Hi. Good
All
to have
right.
you over. Yeah.
Awesome. So before we get started on all things India, we just want to tell you a little bit about Traverse Journeys. We do small group tours and self-guided trips in about 25 different destinations. We focus on people, planet, and purpose. So for us, what that means is a lot of engagement when we're on the ground with like people to people interactions and activities, getting to know people, having great conversations, and supporting local economies and like everything that we're doing from our vendors and partners and restaurants and guides. And with that comes a lot with like the planet, whether it's like leave no trace when we're camping and hiking, making sure we're minimizing plastic waste, also really appreciating and protecting these gorgeous natural environments that we visit. And then traveling with meaning, having a greater impact on the communities that we visit, personal transformation for yourself, because travel in itself is so powerful. We also have community partners, nonprofit, and NGO partners in every destination that we visit that we give a donation to for the really incredible things that they're doing in and for their communities. So, without further ado, we're going to start talking a little bit about India. So, Pradhav, over to you
Yeah.
for a little northern India snapshot.
Yeah. So, well, we are starting. We in NC, though the tour that we are doing, this is about 9 days tour, and we are covering good popular places of North India along with some offbeat destinations. Though personally, I feel that even in lifetime, it's very popular saying in India that lifetime is not enough to see India. But these 9 days, you will get the best of the North India, and the best experience that you can get within that short period of time. Starting with Delhi, which is the capital of India, is the one of the largest cities in Asia and in our country. Almost about 24 million people here, and Delhi has a history of almost which goes back to 2000 or 3000 years back. And what you see, and when you travel to Delhi, we'll be visiting some of the most popular sites that are World Heritage, that are by UNESCO, has have taken them in World Heritage sites, and along with structures that are mesmerizing, and also the food here is going to be very interesting for you. Uh, we are spending about one night here, if I'm correct,
In Delhi, yeah.
Ashley,
Mm-hmm.
in Delhi. It will be very fast, but we'll be able to cover the top places here. And next day, we are going to leave for uh, for Varanasi on a flight. It's a 1.5 hour flight from Delhi to Varanasi. Varanasi is one of the oldest living cities in the world. I mean, the oldest living city in the world, and also the birthplace, or the most important place. Like, it's a Jerusalem for Hindus, and also very important for the Buddhist people. Uh, Buddha gave his first sermon here, and that's why it's very important for them. Then for Hindus, uh, very important river that flows from here. It's called Ganges. So you'll see that a lot of people come here for all aspects of their life, from beginning and till the end. So you'll see the Varanasi is also popular for. It's very famous for people to come and get cremated there. So anywhere in India, you'll see that Hindus get cremated after they die, because it's how it's that's how we believe that you get out of the cycle of rebirth. So you'll see that in Varanasi, we'll be spending good 2 nights here, and Varanasi has also it's kind of it keeps. I mean, what people I've traveled with, they have been you know they've been flabbergasted by what Varanasi is, seeing life and death at the same place, and how people, people really, their belief in people that brings them there every from morning till evening. uh, so Varanasi is kind of, the most important Hindu place, a Hindu pilgrimage for us. So we'll be spending about 2 nights here. We'll be taking boat rides, couple of boat rides. We'll be walking through the ancient part of the town. And for me, or for many people that I've met, Varanasi is one of the best destinations, or the more favorite destinations for travelers. It might not be a holidaying place, but it is for any traveler. This is one of the best destinations that you can imagine. Then from here, we'll be again
Pradham,
traveling to Jaipur.
I'm,
Sorry,
I was just
yeah,
gonna say, and I was just gonna say that we'll get into some pictures for these in just a little bit. Pradhav, I'm gonna move
sure,
to the slide where we can talk more just about like the geography and climate, and then we'll get
sure,
into like the specifics of each destination in a minute.
sure.
Here is what Pradhav is just talking about. Here you can see Delhi, the capital. And like this is kind of the region of India that we'll be traveling in on like a big picture level. So these two specific areas, Pranhav, can you tell us a little bit about just kind of geographically the difference between like the Delhi region and then the Rajasthan region?
So Delhi is kind of arid, and rest of the area that we'll be visiting, which is Jaipur, it's kind of mix of, it's kind of semi-arid, surrounded by mountains, and it's also even Karoli that we are going to visit. Couple of places that we are visiting, they are kind of semi-arid places. And in February, the temperatures are pleasant. In During the day, it can be little hot, but not really. It's warm. Basically, it's not too hot in February. In fact, it's perfect weather to travel in through North India. Uh, then Delhi is again semi-arid, same sort of semi-arid, and it's it is a mix of humid and hot and humid kind of a temperature in Delhi, but not in February though. It's hot during May and June, but February is great for North India, any of these places that we are visiting.
And just a little bit like on the history. So we won't get into the whole history because that would take us like another, 5 hours to even just like lightly touch on it. But Pradhav and I were talking a little bit right beforehand on some of the history that you'll connect with on the trip and in these particular areas. Pradhav, what would you say are kind of some of the key pieces of history that are like significant and interesting in this part of northern India?
Well, in North India, though we are not visiting those parts, but our history kind of, when in India we used to have an oral tradition, that how history was kind of passed on from one generation to another. It used to be an oral tradition. So when the British were in India, and people, locals, natives used to talk about the antiquity, and how of antiquity, and the historical references that they used to give to the British. They used to, make fun of Indians, saying that these people talk nonsense. They don't know anything. I mean, it's just kind of BS mostly. So, but in 1930s, there was this archaeologist. They were doing some excavations in Western India, and where they found some remains of a city. So once they started digging, that's where they actually excavated a whole city that existed in India, that people, the natives, used to talk about, and their stories and their folklore, even their mythology, that lot of it had reference to that old civilization. And that was known, and that time they named it the Indus Valley Civilization. And that kind of took us back, historically took us back almost 3,000 years. And but we are not visiting that part. And a lot of things that a lot of our gods, idols of gods and goddesses, were kind of found there in that place. Then So that is almost, you start with almost 3000 years before Christ era. And then we have a lot of, then came the Aryans. When the Aryans came, they were a pastoral community, and they kind of, it is believed that they pushed the natives of that time called the Dravidians, who pushed them south towards South India, and Aryans kind of took over north, and they were fairer people. They were kind of, they had organized armies. They were pastoral in nature. They also, they brought new techniques of farming with them. And so kind of this North India, it is believed, though a lot of people will say, oh no, it is not, but some people, some historians have said that North India is mostly Aryans who came from European countries. uh, then we had the Greeks in about 300 years before Christ era. The Greeks came with Alexander. He came to the borders of India at that time. He got sick here. Probably this says he got malaria, and then he went back. He left his ambassadors here. Those ambassadors kind of, they were in here. They ruled certain parts of India in North India, and they had their envoys. So that took us, that was another confluence for us, a lot of mixing of culture from the Greeks and Indian local native culture of that time. Then came, uh, well, almost for, there was a period of the ancient, the number four, which says here, it's ancient Magad Empire. This was the empire of a king called Ashoka. He was one of the greatest kings of past in India. He's the person responsible for propagating or spreading Buddhism throughout North India and beyond India. Basically, he's one of the biggest followers of Buddha at that time. And during this time, India was largest in its size. Almost, you will say, even Afghanistan, Bangladesh, a lot of Southeast Asia were all Hindu kingdoms of those times. So that's why you will see, when if you've traveled to Southeast Asia or to Afghanistan, you will see a lot of Hindu and Buddhist influence in terms of in their architecture or in their buildings. At least in, if you remember what the Taliban's did to Buddhist statues in Afghanistan. So he was the one responsible to take Buddhism all the way there. Then came the Mughals. They were from central India. They stayed here for almost 200 years, and during this time, India really prospered because Mughals, though they were outsiders, they were India kind of, they came to Delhi first, and they ruled India from Delhi. And though we are, we are almost 95% of Hindus, but we've, for past 1,000 years, we were kind of ruled by foreigners and mostly Muslim rulers of different dynasties of different countries. So they came and ruled us. So Mughals, amongst all the different Muslim dynasties that came to India, ruled us for the longest period of time. And during this time, there was a lot of peace, in a way that the culture and uh, the economy of the country also flourished due to the peace. So during this time, the famous Taj Mahal was also built. Great cities of India in North India were built during Mughal times. That you'll be seeing those cities when you visit India. Delhi has one of the cities that were built by Mughals. Delhi has almost six cities that were built within Delhi. The modern Delhi has six historical cities that were built by six different dynasties of Muslim rulers in past 1,000 years. Then we had seventh city was built by the British, who came later in 1700s. They kind of got permission to rule, permission to do business in India by the Mughal rulers during in 1700s, early 1700s. And that's how the British came in. They came into India as traders, but they kind of took over, kind of got into local politics, and took over gradually took, kind of pushed the Mughals down and kind of overthrew them completely, and took over Delhi and North India. And that's how, British also left. They were the last of the foreigners that ruled us, the British. And in 1947 they left us, and rest, it's been 75, almost 75 years that of our independence, and we are a democracy.
Amazing.
Actually,
It's very hard to fit all of India's history into 5 minutes. So that was phenomenal. Um, so just a little bit about like the culture, and I'll say a few things, and then Prabhav, you can chime in. So we talk a lot in our traverse trips about like culture and cultural concepts, and we use a lot of academic terms. This comes from Hofstede. There's a link in here, and I'll send it at the end too. But India is very much like a collectivist culture, meaning we think like that thinking in terms of we versus me. Although one thing that we find interesting that's a little different than other collectivist cultures, it also has a slightly individualistic leaning because of this philosophy with Hinduism. So the cycle of rebirth and life also depends on one's own actions. So that's something that you'll see. It's a very networked community that you'll see in India. People know people, relationships are very important. You'll also see in India, and this goes a long ways back into the ideas of hierarchy and power distance, like these structures in society where people have their place and their role. There's a certain level of acceptance of unequal rights. It's quite different than like a lot of what we experience in a lot of Western culture, where we have this tendency toward equality, democracy. So these are concepts that we like to talk about throughout the trip because it plays out in like day-to-day experiences. And then in terms of like values, you'll see hospitality, it's huge, like some of the most welcoming, people you'll ever meet. Tradition is really big, like rituals and rites, and like whether it's like tradition in clothing or in food or in festivals, you'll see that a lot. Pradhav, anything you want to add on the cultures and values?
well, we, so our main, I think, two things that really make everything, all the culture that you see your face, I mean, it's so different. uh, when I travel myself from one place to another within the country, every 100 kilometers the culture changes. And every few hundred kilometers the language changes. So in a lot of places, in fact 80% of the places that I visit in the country, I will not be able to understand the language they speak. And a lot of even the culture changes. Though these days, because of pop culture, a lot of festivals that were celebrated maybe in South India that are being celebrated now in North as well. There's some festivals, some culture, and even culture that there's been a lot of exchange of culture as well with media, that people have started celebrating festivals that that people in South India or people in Varanasi might be celebrating. We are also celebrating those festivals nowadays. The traditionalists, they say that we should not be doing that, but this is something which is inevitable. We are celebrating Halloween these days here. So I mean, so it's, I mean, it's kind of, it's happening everywhere in the world. Then also the language part, we in India we have almost more than 1600 mother tongues, and more than 120 languages is spoken by more than 10,000 people. So, and there are about 18 official languages in the country. So, as you can see, the language, if the language changes, food changes. With food, culture changes. So it's very in every area, every district has a very unique language or a culture, and also the food. That, and all this is kind of supported by the family system that we have, which kind of, your arranged marriages also come into that. Kind of is the main one of the reasons. Families keep the culture intact. Families keep the language, food, all that intact. So I think that is one of the major reasons why India culturally is very strong and intact, because of the family system that we have here. And but yes, I always tell people that, especially youngsters who are 18-year-olds who are just starting off their traveling, that they must, because I've done a bit of traveling myself a lot. I've traveled through Europe, I've been through Southeast Asia, uh, and even North India, sorry, I mean, you know uh, in part of around India. So I say that India is kind of one of the countries that a person must visit, and because we are changing very fast, we are kind of getting uh, urbanized very fast. It's changing, everything is changing, like in cities are changing completely. Where I used to live in the city, and if I go after 10 years, it'll be completely different. There are skyscrapers here, cars, vehicles, everything has changed. So India is changing really fast, and people must experience it before it's completely modernized. And we lose our cultures, and family systems are changing more and more. In cities, people are becoming more and more, they're turning into nuclear families. I grew up in a joint family system, where, I mean, you must not even heard of joint family system, where which maybe European countries, they might have had that system 150 years back or 100 years back. Which kind we are completely kind of, maybe in in cities and villages, that's the difference. Cities, we are more nuclear. In villages and rural areas, we are more of joint family systems, where all daughter-in-laws, all sons, their kids, grandparents, everyone live in the same one big house. And so that kind of keeps a lot of culture and food and system intact in a way. I think that's one of the reasons. So yeah, just
Yeah.
try and visit India as soon as possible. Otherwise, I mean, it's just changing, and it's something that people must experience.
Totally. And that's actually a
Mhm.
really, really great, some super great insights and some really great insight into, why travel with Traverse. First and foremost, we encourage you to travel to India, whether it's with us or on your own or some other way, but definitely a place to get to, if not once, multiple times, because there's so much to learn and see and know in India. Some of the things that we do differently with our travels is we really emphasize like slow travel, like deeply knowing a place rather than just like checking places off your list, like making local connections, not having this mass tourism experience, people and planet minded. We look a lot at like artisan craftsmanship and ancient history. This picture is from this February, our little group, as we were about to embark on our hike. So kind of like some of the unique things that we've developed in like the way that we present our trips. So like accommodations is something that we really focus on because in India there are a lot of really, really big accommodations where people are in and out and thousands of tourists and buses every day. It doesn't feel very like very, very grounding or very home. So we really look at these accommodations that are small, and we'll talk a little bit about like heritage and palace hotels. There's some really unique types of accommodations in India. We look at locally owned places, ones that focus on eco-friendliness, unique experiences. Pradhav and I Pradhav is from the Rajasthan area. When we put a lot of this together, it was looking at like where can we go hiking, not something super intense for this itinerary, just like a nice little hike. Because one of the things you'll find in India, there's so many sites you can actually become like palaced out. Like you see so much amazing architecture, but at a certain point, it's like overload on your system. So giving this itinerary some texture. So instead of going to see another site, let's go hike where we can see in the distance, like this amazing fort, for example. And like Pradhav was mentioning earlier, like getting on a boat and experience the sunrise in Varanasi, like getting to a palace by a tuk-tuk. I mentioned before that we have nonprofit partners in every destination where a percentage of sales goes to. Here we have a really unique and really amazing community partner connected to one of our accommodations. We also focus on sustainable food and emphasis on like local cuisine. Organic agriculture has a very interesting history that dates back to like the 1970s, like Green Revolution era, if anyone is familiar with that. So that's something that we talk a lot about on the tour, and farming and food in India, especially because it's like Pradhav was saying, so much changes from region to region, district to district, area to area. So um, these are just some of the experiences that you'll get. Like in terms of inclusions, we include like the local ground transit. We actually have a local flight that we include, a domestic flight. You're getting a lot of your meals every day, very immersive cultural experiences. We do it in a very mindful, respectful way. We integrate time in nature and give back, and we keep it in a small group format. So this is a little map of what we do. So we had mentioned earlier, we start in Delhi. We spend a little bit of time there. We're going to get into the day by day in a minute. And then we actually take a flight to Varanasi. And this is that ancient city, like one of the world's longest, oldest living cities. And then from there, we go, you can see to the other direction to Jaipur. And then we drive. We go to Kaurali, up to Agra, and back to Delhi. So we're going to go through these in more detail. So, Pradhab, I'll turn it over to you for just kind of like this is a more or less a list of the things that we see in Delhi. Again, hitting some of the key sites, but we also have some very unique ones in there. And I'll show you a video in a minute after Pradhab is done kind of telling us about these. You want to take over?
Yeah. So the picture that you see here, this is a World Heritage Site in Delhi. This is kind of a predecessor to Taj Mahal. This was the first mausoleum built by a Mughal ruler here in India, and this was in Delhi. Uh, this was built by a woman for a husband, almost 100 years before Taj Mahal, which was built uh, by a husband who was one of the richest men in the world, Shah Jahan, for his wife. This is one of the attractions that we'll be visiting in Delhi. Then we'll be visiting Old Delhi, which is kind of one of the last historic cities of Delhi and also the most remaining one. We'll be visiting India's largest mosque here. It's a beautiful mosque. We'll just spend about maybe half an hour or so there, and then we'll walk into the narrow lanes of Old Delhi, and you'll see how the markets, old markets were, and how there was some. You can also indulge in some food experiences if you want. There's some great safe street food places that we recommend sometimes. Then we'll be after this we'll be visiting a very interesting. Also, we will be having lunch at the Sikh temple. This is one of the largest and most important Sikh temples here in Delhi, and this feeds almost 25 to 30,000 people every weekend, about 15 to 18,000 people on a weekday. So you'll see people from all walks of life, from the richest to the poorest, can come, and of any religion or no religion, people can come and have a meal there. So they say that and it's going to be one of the most unique experiences of Delhi for you. India Gate, that's going to be a drive around. President House is going to be a drive around. But I think your main attractions for Delhi are going to be Humayun's tomb, Old Delhi Walk, and the Sikh temple. And this is going to keep us busy throughout the day. I mean, through the day at that time. Uh,
Exactly. And I have a few videos to show
yeah.
you. So this first one is where Gandhi took his last steps. And what's really cool about kind of this day is we're getting to like traverse over centuries. So we see a lot of this ancient part of Delhi and learn a lot about the history, but we also look at like 20th century history and how pivotal that was. So here is like a little just video of these steps that you can see. This is the Memorial Museum, and this is actually like the physical space where Gandhi was assassinated. So that's something that we see and we talk about because it's really unique and interesting to hear about the history of that particular event and from the Indian perspective. And then this is of the streets that Pradhav was talking about, just like all the fun craziness, getting some street food. This is a really like good spot that I went to. So that's kind of a little visual of Delhi for you. And then, so like after Delhi, so we take a little flight and we head to Varanasi. So these are some of the kind of key experiences in Varanasi that we do. Do you want to talk a little bit, Pradhav, about kind of like the arti ceremony and the
Yep.
morning
Yep.
and the dangers?
So I'll start with Sarnath. So Sarnath in Varanasi is the place where Buddha gave his first sermon, and this is kind of it's an important pilgrimage for the Buddhists. So you will find a lot of Buddhist people from Southeast Asian countries. They come here for their pilgrimage, and all of these countries, be it Sri Lanka, be it Myanmar, be it Thailand, they all have their kind of their help centers in this part of the town. And the stupas and this whole these bricks that structures that you're seeing here, they date back to uh, almost 300 years before Christ era, 3 to 400 years before Christ era. And this used to be a college or a Buddhist school at that time. People used to come in for the Buddhist studies to this particular point. And you'll see a lot of remnants of that school when we are walking around here. So this is one thing that we do in Sarnath. The other is we also visit a museum which houses artifacts which go back to almost 200 years before Christ era, and also from 4th century, 5th century AD. All, and most of them are they belong to the Magad Empire period, the Ashoka's time. So that this is going to be very unique experience for you. We'll be spending about a couple of hours when we go to this part of the town. We'll be spending 2 hours here, about 2 hours. And then this is the Varanasi, the main attraction of Varanasi, which is because main old city, and basically the play area of our concern is the old. Sorry, no, I mean it's going to be the city, the river side we are going to visit. And this is basically the city. It has developed only on the western part of the river. Eastern part, there's no structures, because Hindus believe in saluting or or offering prayers to a rising sun. So that's why eastern part is all there's nothing there. It's just that that's why we get to see a beautiful sunrise across the river. And here we'll be going because this whole city is kind of developed on the banks of the river, on the western bank. So there are a lot of these buildings that we call ghats, these steps, and there are buildings there. And all these buildings were made by people from kings of different areas of India, because everybody wanted a place to stay for themselves and for their people who visit Varanasi. And they were kind of helped there. So there are buildings that are from South India. They were built by people from South India. There were buildings that were built by people from Jaipur, from Delhi, different. So there are almost more than 80 buildings along the ghat, along the river. So we'll be taking two boat rides here. One boat ride in the morning, which is going to be very interesting because we'll be seeing the life, or the morning life, how what people do in the morning along the river when we take a boat ride. And then once we finish the boat ride, we'll be taking a walk through the old ancient part of the town. You'll see people making tea. You'll see how people usually wake up and start their day at 4 o'clock in the morning in Varanasi, because a lot of these locals, especially people in the old city, they take a walk or go to the river, offer their prayers, come back, and then they start their day and go to their work or whatever. And people take, it is believed that people take a dip. People come there to take a dip in the river to cleanse their soul. So it is believed that once you've committed enough sins, you go to Varanasi, take a dip, and you'll be cleansed of all the sins that you've committed. So that's why you see all the people going there and taking bathing in the river. And then later on we'll be visiting. Varanasi is known for very it's kind of famous for uh, silk weaving. So we'll be visiting a factory in Varanasi that showcases silk weaving. And this art also dates back almost 1,000 years. And silk from the brocade from Varanasi was very famous even during it was a big export during the British and during the Mughal times. You'll find brocade from Varanasi in palaces in European palaces, very common to see in Venice, be it Venice or be it Versailles. Any of these big palaces, you'll always, if there's silk brocade, it's from Varanasi mostly.
Exactly. Yeah. And the silk process is really fascinating because that what we just saw in that picture is like the old style, non-mechanized way that they make the silk. So it's very ancient process. So from Varanasi, we go to Jaipur, where a whole different city. We get to stay at this really beautiful guest house. We can see sites like the City Palace and artisan crafts makers have some amazing seasonal cuisine and some amazing street cuisine because Pradhav knows all the good vendors. We do a sunrise hike. We go do a local farm visit. So Pradhav, do you want to just tell us a little bit about it, and I'll play these videos while you're talking?
We So Jaipur is culturally and as a city, it's one of the most, it's one of the prettiest cities of of India, and it's kind of known for its buildings, for its culture, for it's a great big shopping destination. You'll find people from all over the world come here to shop in and they kind of buyers would come to Jaipur to shop and take things back. A lot of that Indian stuff that you see in US or in European countries, that's mostly from Jaipur. Then you'll see the city is also, we call it the pink city. The whole city is pink in color, the old city. It's pink in color, and the major attractions here are the fort and the city palace, where we still have a king, erstwhile royal family that still lives there. And so Jaipur is going to be a mix of everything for you, from buildings to food to culture to shopping. It's a good mix. It's a great destination for travelers, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And like, here's this beautiful sunrise hike that we do out in the hills. You get to see things in the distance. On the right, you can see a vendor serving lassi, which is like the Indian yogurt drink that you have out of these clay cups, which is the traditional way to serve both chai and these drinks. Also, much more sustainable than plastic, which is awesome. There are a lot of initiatives in India that are not using plastic. So that's really, really great to see. So lots to see in Jaipur. Very kind of relaxing place where we stay as well, our accommodations. And then from Jaipur, we drive to Karoli, which is really unique because this is where I was mentioning the heritage properties. There are many of these in India that have been these old palaces that are restored for kind of a new use, because maybe they aren't being used as like a like palace so much anymore, but used as like an accommodation, because that's a way to keep them alive, to keep traditions alive, to keep people in the community employed. And then the picture of the man and the woman that you see here are the Maharaja, like the owners, which Pradhav can tell us more historically what that means. But they actually come out and like say hello. So like we got to talk with him and his son when we were in there in February. This is their home. They're inviting you in. So it's a very, very unique experience. Pradhav, you want to tell us a little bit about this? And I'm paying attention to time. I know we're getting close to our time, so we'll keep going. But
Yes.
Prabhav, tell us a little bit
So,
about
right.
Kaurali.
So, before independence, India used to have a feudal system, and that was like, we had a paramount power sitting either in Delhi or in Agra or somewhere in this, whichever the capital was. And then there were these kings in different areas, and then they had their own feudal lords underneath them. That's how the system used to work. So during the British time, they gave this system. They called the kings of that time the Maharajas. Literally means the great king. Maha is great, Raja is king. So we in Rajasthan, we had about 17 states. One of these 17 states Karoli was also that's going to be hosting us. Used the is the royal family of that region, and they're kind of, though they don't have any political powers since the independence, but they still kind of, they're kind of figureheads who kind of cultural. They're kind of, up to upkeep the culture and traditions of a certain area. So you'll always find people, still have a lot of respect and love for the feudal families or the royal families of these areas, because they've stayed in touch with the people, though they don't have any powers, but still people, and they've kind of, after independence, we were in all these buildings, and people were left with these big buildings, palaces, forts, but they didn't have the liquidity to maintain them. So tourism came as a savior for them. So a lot of these properties around the country, especially in Rajasthan, because Rajasthan is kind of the face of Indian tourism, and a lot of these buildings have survived because of tourism. And will be the property that we'll be staying in. Again, this is how they maintain the place. It's a 100-year-old property, and they've been able to maintain this place only because of tourism. Otherwise, I've seen palaces and properties where they don't have tourism, and there's a big difference in the condition of those properties. So yes, I mean, the kind of people are thankful here for tourism, and that's why you'll see how the king, also the erstwhile family, also comes out and they greet people, meet them, and appreciate travelers for coming and choosing their place to stay. And what makes Karoli special is this family also claims their lineage to, if you've heard about one of the popular gods of India called Krishna. So this family, their palace is almost 700 years old, which we'll be visiting. We are staying in one of the palaces, but this where we stay is a newer palace. This was built in early 1900s. But the palace that we visit the next day, that was built in 1300s, and you'll see one of the most beautiful frescoes, murals that they've been restoring all those murals for past almost 10 years that I've been seeing them restore them, and they have a lot of work there. So the palace is going to be one of our main attractions of this place. And also just one of it's good to, while we are visiting all these big cities, this one offbeat location is always a good kind of, it's a pleasant surprise when you arrive there. Anything else I should be adding, Ashley?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, it's really cool to come outside of the big cities and see something that's like so unique. So the palace stays, and that's again kind of in line with that whole sustainable tourism, these heritage properties, like keeping traditions alive. So from Karoli, we go to Agra, and Agra is where Taj Mahal is. And of course, that's like a big draw in India, and it is amazing, but it's like icing on the cake. And so it's really cool when you're going through this entire journey through these other parts of northern India to be able to come to this like last portion of the trip. And so the place that we stay that we really love is a boutique hotel that it's like really, really beautifully designed, locally owned. They use eco-friendly products in the room, which you don't see that all that often. So that's a really cool thing to see, and something that we try and support more of as well. So when we get to the Taj Mahal, the day of, like the viewing day, uh, we have a local guide. So Pradhav is with us the whole time, but we actually have like a Taj Mahal local guide as well. So Pradhav, do you want to just give us a few key pointers about the Taj Mahal?
So Taj Mahal, it's going to be, though we visit Agra, the city, only for Taj Mahal. City is, we don't go out into the town to do much, but Taj Mahal is the main attraction. As Ashley said, that this is icing on the cake, and it really, it's, if you are visiting Taj Mahal for the first time, it gives you a hair raising experience. You'll get goosebumps when you see it for the first time. And so Taj Mahal is a busy place. It's one of the, I think, one of the most touristy place that we'll be visiting, but it's definitely worth it to visit. And we'll be kind of, we'll see how, when we visit Taj Mahal, it'll be a couple of hours of our tour of Taj Mahal. And after we are done with Taj Mahal, we'll be visiting the fort of Agra, and both are very unique, and main attractions of Agra.
Yeah, perfect.
Anything else?
So no, I think that's good. I know we're kind of getting close to time. I want to make sure we get everyone's questions in. So just kind of like to go over a few other questions that we get. So like Indian cuisine is a whole subject of its own. We have a blog that has some like good tips on it. I'll send it to you guys as a follow up. But one of the things like in our itinerary specifically, we really focus on like local seasonal fare and like these various Indian styles of where we're visiting. So not even just northern India, but like in Rajasthan, like Rajasthani food, or like when we're in Agra, we get some really good farm to table like home style meals. We have a meal that we do some Southern Indian cuisine, so you can try that and see how it's different. We also have this delicious meal that is Parsi, that is like Persian influence, that has like some really unique and interesting history. We get out and have some street food and show you how to be safe eating street food, which is just something not to miss for sure. And of course, all the drinks, the chai, the lassi, the tea, and then we have all of the answers for you on how to be vegetarian, vegan, dairy free. I'll say that the hardest one is if you're like 100% dairy free because there's ghee, clarified butter in like just about everything. So that's maybe one of the hardest ones, but the other ones like gluten free are all very doable. Just some pictures of the many different delicious eats in India. Just to go kind of like a few tips. Our trip is in February because we find that to be a really nice time where it's not too hot, you know, it's not cold, it's not monsoon season. We actually have a blog that I'll send you that is like what to pack for India. Some like you know, layers are really good. We talk about scarves in case you need to cover your head or be more conservative. Slip on off shoes are really helpful if you're entering temples or mosques. You know, safety is something that we talk about a lot, like a lot of general things, but by and large, like India can be a very safe place to travel. You know, it really helps being with people because it can be overwhelming. The experiences, the driving can feel kind of crazy, or you don't know where to go, you don't speak the language. We give you lots of tips on like money and tipping, as well as like ethical travel and what to do in certain situations, like photography, for example. You know, getting around, a lot of times in the big cities you'll be using having a private driver, because like there isn't always like you can't always like walk somewhere, for example. And we also give you lots of tips on cultural etiquette and like how the best way to respond to things. Pradhav, are there any high level tips that you want to add for India?
Well, and one of the things, I mean, I'm just going off the topic, but I just remembered regarding food. The food that you're served, Indian food that you're served in the West, it's a lie. It's not Indian food at all. I think only a few places are serving good quality Indian food, but otherwise the recipes that they use to cook that food is that is served to you is completely opposite of what how we would cook here. So the flavor and the taste of Indian food in the West is a joke. And whenever I've tried it, I've been it's expensive and it's kind of a letdown. So food is going to be one of the major things that you're going to enjoy here. Uh, and well, about safety, well, India is see, though I'm going to be with you throughout the trip, and we are relatively safe. You just have to be a smart traveler that you'll not. It's not like a lot of times people who've traveled through pickpocketing or getting hassled just while walking on the street, or getting it's kind of it's really safe, though I've been to places that are much more unsafe, but the areas that we are visiting, it's kind of absolutely safe for people to visit. You just have to be a smart traveler, that's it. You have to be careful you also have to be careful with the water that you drink, food. You have to be careful that you don't eat salads. You eat cooked food that is cooked well. Then tipping is kind of not mandatory like the US, but it is appreciated and people are used to getting tipped, and it's kind of become a culture in the travel and tourism trade actually. So, and well, getting around, we'll have our vehicle throughout the trip. So, and I'll be organizing most of our vehicles wherever we are. And in certain places, we'll be giving you some time to explore by yourself. explore on your own. And I think and cultural etiquettes, uh, well, it's just be nice to people, and that's it. You have to, we take off, although I'll be there to guide you throughout. Whenever we enter a temple, we kind of take off our shoes. You kind of, just dress appropriately in a way that, which goes with the area, not exactly too, it's not that, that you have to be too, cover yourself, wear full jeans the whole time. But it's kind of better to, to because you'll see people now wearing modern clothing here in India. It's not that it's something very different, that, you'll see a lot of locals wearing Western clothes nowadays. It's even in villages, people wear Western clothes these days. So clothing is not the kind of, maybe an idea that you must have had from videos of India 10 years back. But today it's very different. So, that's all accepted now. And it's going to be a good weather. I think it was not too cold when you visited, correct, Ashley? It was
Oh,
just fine. The
February.
weather,
Yeah,
yeah,
last year,
the
or
weather was
this year, I
pretty
should
good.
say, we were in February, and the weather was great.
Yeah.
Just common sense, a few layers, that kind of thing. We have, for the hike, some more sporty clothes, and then like some, if we're out in the city, like you can always get clothes there too, which is always something kind of fun to do because there's like indigo block print, and there's some like really beautiful textiles. So we are hitting time, so I want to make sure that there's time for some questions. First, though, just to make sure, so we're going in February. We would love to have you guys go along. You can also choose your own dates if you, we can do it as a self-guided, like during your dates. We have a little discount for you if you book by the end of the month. Just use this code. We do encourage you to book sooner rather than later because like things are filling up. So we're really only about 4 months away, which is crazy. The time is flying. So if you're thinking about joining us, definitely jump on that sooner rather than later. Just as a side note, we have an add-on to this trip to Bhutan because it's quite easy to go from Delhi to Bhutan. So if you're already on that end of the world, it might be something that you would be interested in. So, and last thing, some more events coming up. So keep an eye out for those. You can sign up for Eventbrite like you did for this one. So finally, questions. I know, Amy, you had asked us. So do you want to go first with your questions? You're welcome to either type them into the chat or you can just put your microphone on and ask via video.
Okay, great. Thank you. By the way, this sounds amazing. And thank you all for such a thorough kind of overview of what we're going to be doing. I have a friend who's a travel writer, and she said the most common issue that they have when they go to India is getting gastrointestinal food poisoning. So that's what I was asking about, like if the food vendors, if you can't control everything, but like if you just happen to know them or, just making sure that the food is safe, because she said it's happened to almost everybody she knows. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer my experience, and then Pradhav, you can answer for you too. I know I have a whole blog on like natural remedies for travel, including like charcoal, and there's like grapefruit seed extract. Like there are different ways you can build up your own immunity and your own like gut system. And probiotics, that's one piece of it. The water, as Pradhav had mentioned, is really important. Like I always carry a Grail water filter and drink my water that way. As far as the street food itself, when we're traveling with Pradhav, like he knows like a good vendor from a not good vendor. And like when we're in Jaipur, he knows them personally. You're looking at things like, is the food hot? Does it look clean? Are there lines of people? It's always a good sign when there's like a lot of people in a place. Like it means like it's a popular place. A lot of these street vendors have a lot of history. They probably, like many of them have been in business for decades. So that's like another key piece of it, and then knowing your own body as well, like knowing if you're sensitive, being more careful, like with meat, for example, especially like with the heat piece of things. The other thing is sometimes people are affected by food, not because it's actually bad, but because it's very spicy and they're not used to that level of spice. So that's something else to pay attention to. And I think also just having some like both preventative and if it happens kind of remedies with you, whether it's either actual over-the-counter stuff or natural remedies, is good to have. There's something we call the brat diet, brown rice, or what is it? I'm forgetting, but rice, apples, burnt toast. So if you do feel well or not feel well, bananas is the first one. things to eat. So that's kind of a key good travel tip. Pradhav, do you have any other food tips?
Well, as I said, you have to be careful with water or any these liquids, water-based stuff. So go for always go for bottled water uh, or treated water, basically. And then you have to be careful with ice at times. So if you are in a good restaurant, they make their own ice. That's fine, but you can't just pick up an iced drink anywhere, just about anywhere. You have to be careful about that. Then don't I usually ask my guests to avoid salads, because salads are kind of uncooked. So it's better not to, while it's just 9 days, so people should avoid uncooked food at all. If rest, these places are I mean, it's been a while. It's been a while I've had any guest with food poisoning. I've had people with, they might feel a little funny because constantly eat Indian food is rich. Indian food has a lot of butter, a lot of, can have a lot of nut gravy. So, a lot of cashew based and all that sort of stuff. So it's rich food. So that's why people might feel a little funny sometimes. But I haven't faced food poisoning with my guests for, it's been a very long time. So I don't think so that's a problem. You hear about those stories from long back, and but you have to be careful where you're eating, actually. So people who've had bad experiences, they must have eaten something wrong and at a wrong place. So that happens. Even I would avoid. I've had. I would not drink water just anywhere. I would also take, if I'm traveling, I would always have bottled water. I will not have untreated water anywhere, just anywhere. So you have to be clear. You have to be careful like that. Otherwise, these days we are much in a lot better state. I mean, the hygiene part.
Yeah, awesome.
Now,
Any
in fact, we also say that brush your teeth with bottled water. Don't use tap water for brushing teeth. You know, yeah.
any other questions? Anyone else?
I think they're muted. No?
Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you have a question or type it in the box. But if not, we can wrap up. Thanks for hanging with us. I know we went a little long on this one, but really appreciate you joining us today. And thank you, Pradhav, for all of your information. You're always such a wealth of information. So
You're welcome. And thank you.
hope to see you guys again soon, and we'll be in touch. Bye.